I promised my son my old Chevy if he worked hard in school, but when I gave it to my stepson instead, his heartbreak turned into silence, and I realized too late that pride destroyed our bond forever. I'm not going to pretend I'm the victim here. I'm a grown man who made a promise, forgot the weight of it, and then let his pride do the talking. This is about the day I lost my son and the year I've spent trying to look that fact in the eye without looking away. I've been a mechanic most of my life. The kind of mechanic who can tell you what's wrong with a truck by the way the hood vibrates when you turn the key. I got my first job in a two-bay shop off a frontage road when I was 19, learned how to listen for problems in the hiss of a vacuum leak and the stutter of a failing coil. By my late 20s I'd signed a terrifying stack of papers, hung a sun-faded open sign, and called a crooked cinder block building mine. The shop smelled like every mistake I've ever fixed: burnt oil, brake dust, cold coffee. Customers left with a ride that felt new again, and I stayed behind sweeping the floor in lazy figure eights, counting receipts, convincing myself I was building something my kids could be proud of. Back then kids meant one boy, my son from my first marriage. I'll call him Liam. He lived with his mom across town at first, then across state lines later. But when he was little, he'd hop off the bus and cut through the alley to my shop just to watch me work. He loved my car. Everybody loves their own car, but this one loved me back, or at least that's what I told myself. A midnight blue Chevelle SS that I'd kept alive with 1,000 small acts of faith, finding original chrome for the grille, polishing out scratches that only I saw, keeping the engine bay clean enough to eat from because I wanted him to see what care looked like. Liam would trace the lines of the fenders with his fingers like he was reading Braille. He had a toy version he carried around until the wheels went bald. We'd take slow laps around the block at dusk, the big V8 low and patient, and he'd stare through the windshield like the street was a movie screen. One night when he was 10 and the shop radios were playing more static than music, he filmed me on a cheap camcorder while I swapped plugs. "If I keep my grades up," he asked, dead serious, "could I get this car one day?" I twisted a socket and thought about the question for maybe 3 seconds. "Keep your grades up," I said, "stay out of trouble, and this whole place can be yours. The car comes with it." He whooped, dropped the camera, and tackled me around the waist. We laughed until the motion sensor lights clicked off and the darkness felt like a blanket. Time moves. That's the whole secret, and I missed it. His mom remarried and moved 2 states over. Phone calls happened while I was under cars, which means I missed them. I called back late, he was studying. We sent texts about nothing, memes and weather and the score of a game we both pretended to care about so we could say we'd talked. Meanwhile, I remarried. My wife had a son, Evan, who was 4 when I met him. His dad wasn't around. One day he handed me a plastic steering wheel from a toy and said, "You be the driver," like it wasn't a request. Kids are so simple when they want you. I loved him for that simplicity. Then life punched holes in the walls. The shop had a dry season. My wife got sick, kidneys, E. coli, hospital hallways that smell like lemon cleaners and fear. Evan helped me carry groceries when I was too rattled to make 2 trips. He stacked filters by part number because he liked the order of it. He sat at the front desk with a book while I argued with an insurance adjuster. He started to look like a kid who belonged at my shop, and I let that comfort me. By the time Evan turned 16, he was a straight-A kid with a plan and the kind of steady temperament you want in a surgeon, which is what he kept saying he'd be. I wanted to give him something that felt like recognition, like a metal pin to his chest. So I cleaned up the Chevelle until the paint looked wet and the chrome hurt to stare at. I hung a bow on it because apparently that's what you do now, and I told him, in front of his friends, "She's yours." There are moments you would relive forever, and there are moments you would do anything to unmake. In the same 10 seconds I had both. Evan's face lit like he'd swallowed the sun. He hugged me hard, his voice breaking, "For real?" The garage flooded with whoops and camera flashes. I could feel my father gene glowing. And because I am sometimes the dumbest version of myself when I'm excited, I snapped a photo and texted it to Liam. "Look what your brother got," I wrote, like a man who just remembered a mirror and wanted to admire himself in it. My phone rang within seconds. I stepped outside. The alley smelled like rain on hot concrete. "Tell me this is a joke," Liam said, not yelling exactly, but his voice had that sharpness you hear when metal scores metal. "You promised me that car. You told me if I kept my grades up, it'd be mine." I don't remember what I said first. I remember the attitude behind it, defensive, tired, overconfident. Something like, "Buddy, that was years ago. Things change." I may as well have said, "Promises don't matter." He went quiet for half a beat and then he said the thing I'll be hearing every time I close my eyes for the rest of my life: "You chose your new son over me." I could have said I was sorry. I could have told him I panicked and that sometimes adults act like children when our hearts get poked. Instead I said, "Don't talk to me like that." He said I didn't care about him. I said if he was going to be disrespectful he didn't deserve the car. He said "wow," in a voice like a slammed door, and I, God help me, hung up. For an hour I pretended a party was still happening. I posed for photos with Evan's friends, sliced a cake, clapped when somebody fumbled through "Happy Birthday" on a guitar. Then the adrenaline burned off and I went looking for my wife, who was already looking for me. "Call him back," she said, "and apologize." My pride, that imaginary friend who's ruined more lives than whiskey, told me to wait until he cooled off. He didn't. He changed his number. My ex called 3 weeks later, crying so hard she had to start the story twice. Liam had graduated at the top of his class, from an automotive program. He'd planned to surprise me the weekend he was supposed to visit, ask to work at the shop, learn the business, eventually take over. He was going to show me the toy Chevy he still kept, the VHS tape of me making that promise, like a kid returning a library book on time. Instead, he stood on a stage, looked out into a crowd where I wasn't, and made a different plan. I hadn't even asked what he was studying. 4 years of half conversations and I never asked the only question that mattered. What are you building, son? I started making calls that went nowhere. I sent emails that bounced back. I drove past his old apartment on a business trip like a ridiculous detective and stared at a lobby directory that had no one's name I recognized. My ex blocked me after she realized I wasn't going to give up. Evan did something I didn't deserve. He offered to give the car back. If it helps, he said, I don't need it. We put the keys in a drawer and there they sit, heavy as guilt. Yesterday a small cardboard box showed up with my name on it and no return address. Inside was the toy Chevy, paint chipped from a decade of being loved. There was also a photo I vaguely remembered, me and Liam on the hood of the real car, my arm around him, both of us squinting like the future was bright. The photo had been torn neatly down the middle. The half with me had been tucked under the toy like a grave good. Beneath that, wrapped in a rag, a cassette. Not a USB stick, not a link, a literal tape like the ones that used to rattle around in glove compartments. I dug an old VCR out of a box in the storage room and fed the tape into it with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Grainy footage of the shop appeared, my shop, but younger, cleaner, my hands, but younger, steadier. Liam's voice off camera, Dad, say it again. My voice, a laugh, then, keep your grades up, and this place is yours. The Chevy too. It was me. It was unmistakable. The tape clicked off with a mechanical sigh and the room went quiet except for the sound a person makes when he finally understands what he's broken. People will tell you it's just a car. They're right and they're wrong. It's never the metal. It's the meaning. I promised a boy that he belonged to something I loved, that he had a future with me. When the test came, I put a bow on that meaning and gave it to a different boy because it felt good and I wanted to see myself as generous. I turned love into a performance and forgot the audience that mattered. Since the box arrived, I've done the only useful thing I can think to do, write it all down plain. No excuses, no but you have to understand, no list of the times I tried and got shut out. That's me protecting myself, and I've done enough of that. I took the half photo with my face on it and scotch taped it to the shop's corkboard where the work orders go, right where I'll have to see it when I'm tempted to be proud of anything. I put the toy Chevy on the counter. Customers ask about it and I say, it's a reminder. If they press, I say, of a promise. I've also drafted a letter. Not an email, not a text, a letter with ink that smears when your hand sweats. I wrote about the shop and about the mistake and about how I won't pretend the car is the point. I apologized without asking for forgiveness and without telling him how to feel. I put my number at the bottom and then I crossed it out and wrote it again because it looked too neat the first time, too much like I was trying to look mature on paper. I drove to a blue postbox on the corner, left the truck idling, and held the envelope over the slot. There's a moment when you can still pull a thing back. I stood there holding the edge of that moment until my arm began to ache. I didn't mail it yesterday. I may not mail it today. The truth is, a letter won't rewind a decade or reassemble a ripped photo. It won't give a boy his father at a graduation or a promise he could hold on to when people moved away. What it might do is land on a doormat and say, I see what I did. I will be here if you ever want me to be. And if it never gets read, if it ends up in a box in a closet that he opens when he's 40 and bored on a Sunday, maybe that will be enough time for it to matter. Tonight I locked up the shop and turned off the lights bay by bay until the building felt like a big sleeping animal. I sat on the Chevy's hood in the dark like I used to with a little boy who trusted me, and I told the empty room the truth out loud. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I've got the letter in my jacket pocket. I'm walking to the corner now. I don't know which way my hand will move when I get there. I only know I'm going, and that for the first time since that phone call, the difference between pride and love feels simple enough to follow.